Theodore Roosevelt once said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena."
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble.
So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.
Seize the day.
Whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. Who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause.
And I'm gonna stay right here and fight for this lost cause.
You've got to get mad.
I mean plumb mad dog mean.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Who at best, if he wins, knows the thrills of high achievement. And if he fails, at least fails while daring greatness.
I'm gonna show you how great I am.
Football at its core consists of two teams playing in a stadium, battling it out for 4 quarters to determine a victor. But one man's vision changed how we present football and turned the Super Bowl into not just a game, but a worldwide event.
You're drawing 135 million people in this country to watch it. It's not the 30 million people that are watching on an average Sunday.
Jim Steeg was the Senior Vice President of Special Events for the NFL, organizing Super Bowls 13 through 39. Innovations like TVs in the concession stands, radio playing in the concourse, and jumbotrons came from Steeg's team, all in an effort to make the fan experience more enjoyable.
I think the biggest compliment we ever got was out of one guy. He came back after Super Bowl 18. He said, "That was the greatest game I've ever been to." And I said, the game was lousy. It was 38-14. But his understanding of what the game was, when I left my house and got in the car and when I got back into my garage.
The Super Bowl is much more than a football game indeed. We're going to talk about that. Hi once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome into another edition of The Man in the Arena. This one specifically talking about the Super Bowl, but not necessarily about the game, the players, Tom Brady, the GOAT, Patrick Mahomes and all that. No. Enough of that foo-for-ah. We have more important things to do because there are stories to be told about the Super Bowl, not on the field, but off the playing field. Ever been to one? You know exactly what I mean. Maybe even someday you'll get to go to one, but I doubt this year, not looking at the kind of money it takes. I'm not going with that kind of money it takes. So sit back, relax, enjoy it on your couch, and also enjoy all the attendant entertainment that goes around it. But it was not always that way. I think of something called Up with People. We'll talk about that momentarily. The gentleman you just heard is joining us around the Man in the Arena because he is the guy who for many years was in charge of the special events for the Super Bowl and so many other events. Once we get into it, it is a pleasure once again to welcome Jim Steeg into the show again. My friend, how have you been?
Doing great, Ed. It's always great to hear from you.
Always, because we get to tell stories. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I keep doing this show, just because there's a million stories that I swear we haven't heard yet. And you've got every single story about the Super Bowl, which in and of itself is frightening just to think about the scope of what you know. But let's start here. When you took over, you didn't start from Super Bowl I, of course. You took over special events later on. But as you watched it grow and as you go back to that time, looking back from Super Bowl I to where you took things over, you're such a creative guy, Jim. What were you thinking at that point when you were watching it happen?
Well, listen, thanks for not making me sure that it wasn't there at Super Bowl I. I don't think I'm that old. That's the good news. Although I do remember watching it, so I guess I get away with that. When I first took the job, you really had no idea what it was going to be, and obviously it was just putting on the game and a lot of the things around. Like you said, Up with People did the halftime show there at Super Bowl 13, and it was a lot less. I think Tom Sullivan did the anthem, or who's an actor, a blind actor, that sang it. So it was not, it didn't have a lot to it. It was a lot about the game that was taking place around it. I kind of got involved because in Miami, as I would know from my 4 years with the Dolphins and other Super Bowls there, they decided that they were going to impose 7-night minimums on everybody. And so I think part of it was, let's get in and make sure we get this down to something manageable, like a 3 or 4 night minimum on the hotels. So, it was just kind of an evolution what was taking place. I always like to say that I took it in stages. The first one trying to make the game the best I could. All those things that would make being in the stadium good, and then the next thing, all those things around the stadium. Hospitality tents, things like that. Then making the week better. NFL experience was added to it, all the events that were taking place with it, and then really becoming a citizen of the community with all the charitable events and things you give back and the leave behinds there. So, yeah, I'd like to say I had a master plan, but I never had a master plan.
Okay, so
Yes.
no master plan, but you're kind of like me, and you're like my dad and many others who the mind's always working. When you're looking at something, you're going, oh, I could wait a minute, I could do that, maybe that. Well, wait, I could try that. So when you were handed that role in special events, and you had seen the Super Bowl up to that point, you had watched it, but what was the first thing that came to your mind that said, wait a minute, this is something we have to change, we can do better?
Well, it kind of developed, the first couple of years, Super Bowl 13, I was there as an observer. 14, I was kind of in charge, I was in charge of, but I was feeling my way around. 15 was the same way because we're going back to New Orleans. And then it was going to Detroit, I think at 16 and what was taking place. And that was the advent of the first host committee, which kind of had to be because everybody was going to Detroit. What the heck are we going to do? And that was kind of creating things around the game. And I remember one of the things we did was decor in the stadium there, which hadn't been done before. Now you can't go to a stadium without field wall banners and banners on the front of the press box. And
Yeah, you weren't real happy with a lot of the banners and stuff, were you?
no, the banners that were there at Super Bowl 15, which were bed sheets, that people brought in. I mean, it looked ragtag and all that sort of stuff. So it was dressing it up to make it look really professional. I think that was the first thing we did, and we did that in Detroit. It evolved even more and more over time. But I think the biggest thing we did when we got to Pasadena the next year, and understand that the next year was difficult because we had a 9-week strike, in the middle of the season. And I had gone to a concert outside of LA called the US Concert. And that was the very first time I'd ever seen a Jumbotron. I think Dodger Stadium had a Jumbotron. Nobody else had one. It was the first one I seen one portable, that was set up for a concert. Now you don't even think twice about that at a concert. So I reached out to the guy there at Diamond Vision, Mikio Matsubayashi, and talked to him. Could we put this up in a temporary nature at the Rose Bowl? And he said yes. So I got Roselle to agree to spend $100,000, which was a lot of money back in 1983. And we put one up there, and even the whole plan was to do it. And I remember even after the strike, I said to Pete, do you still want to do this or not? He said, absolutely. I want to make this better than what it could be because we've been out for 9 weeks. So we put it in. That was the first time that an NFL game had a live scoreboard, video board inside the stadium. And I think that innovation is kind of, like you said, there are other things there, whether it's noise in the sound in the concourses or, TV sets, their concession stands, things like that. I mean, I always like to get ideas and steal them and adapt them.
Good man.
I mean, if you remember, I'm sure, I don't know whether this happens anymore, but when you used to go to Vegas and you got on the conveyor belt down the thing, they'd have, famous celebrities, this is John Wayne, welcome to Las Vegas or something. And so we stole one idea was you always did when you walk into a stadium, you've got the speakers blaring at the gate telling you all the prohibitions, don't bring guns in, don't bring this in, don't do this, blah, blah, blah. So we went out and adapted that and got former MVPs, to record those, things for us, thinking, this is Joe Namath telling you not to do whatever or to do whatever it is, and people would listen to it more. So, like I said, those are things you just pick up over time, and you kind of adapt them as best you can possibly do. I went to the U.S. Open tennis, in Flushing Meadows, and they gave you little radios that were in the shape of a American Express card, who was their sponsor. And if you've ever been to a tennis tournament and you sat, say, at Flushing and watched that, if you can't hear the sound of the ball hitting the racket, it's a very bland experience.
Yes.
So this radio, as much as it was giving you the CBS broadcast or something like that, you were hearing the sound. So this was a great idea, because our problem I think we have when we go to the Super Bowl is, let's just say it's Buffalo against Dallas. You're used to going to those games and you've got a radio of some sort listening to your home broadcaster talk about the game. Now you come to the Super Bowl and there's none of that. So we designed a radio off of that had 5 channels on it, that you could get the network feed, you could get the network radio feed, you could get the 2 team radio feeds, and you could get the Hispanic feed.
I think I still have one somewhere. I
Yeah,
swear to you, it's
I've got them
in
all.
my pile somewhere.
Yeah, I've got them in some storage bin somewhere. But I think that really was, like I said, it's taken ideas that are there. And I felt the best I felt about that one after we did it. It was adapted by the Olympics. I saw it when they had it in Korea, and they gave everybody opening ceremonies, little radio. So
Sure.
Ideas are out there that you adapt from somebody else. You see how it is. And I guess I always looked at myself as a fan. And was it that what drove me nuts? I hate to pick on the Dodgers, but I remember I went to I was at a Dodger game, and I went in to go to the bathroom, and I hear Vince Scully's voice reverberating in the bathroom. And I said, "Oh, God, that's brilliant. They put speakers in here so you could listen to Scully, and listen brighter. There's nothing worse than going to the bathroom and somebody hitting a home run and you don't know what took place."
Yep.
Then I looked around and said, they didn't have speakers. In those days, everybody was carrying their transistor radio with them.
Oh.
And that's what you were hearing. So I said, well, why don't we put speakers in the restrooms so that you don't have that, concern about that? So we did that, and I think everybody's adopted that afterwards. And so it's kind of just take those things away.
What did you come up with that Roselle or somebody just looked at you and said, Jim, come on, now that's just not going to work? Did they ever stop you cold and say, this just won't play?
Well, I'll give you one event that Roselle, Super Bowl in Detroit. Again, I'm aging myself. I remember going into him and saying, we had just come off of Cheryl Ladd doing the anthem, I think, in 1980, and Helen O'Connell doing the anthem in 1981. So if you can identify Helen O'Connell, good luck. Then I will know how old you are. So I walked in and I said, listen, we're going to Detroit. There's only one person that could do the anthem in Detroit. I says, Diana Ross. He looked at me, he says, yeah, sure, kid, that'll really happen. So I said, can I try it? He said, absolutely. So, I went and knocked on the door, and she did it. But he's kind of looking at me like he hadn't thought that maybe we weren't big enough, or we weren't something or other that could get that type of attention to you in what was taking place. So, yeah, that was one that I think. The other one that kind of got me upset was I wanted to take over I wanted to create events around the stadium for all these corporations and individuals, and put tents up so they could have pregame parties. It was kind of done ad hoc basis in Pasadena, and I thought we could do something with it, but nobody at the league wanted to roll the dice on the risk, to spend the money on it and all that sort of stuff. So I ended up working it through the host committees and having them be the ones that underwrote, and were in that business, each city. The problem we got into, and I think it happened in San Diego, was when I said we can't do this anymore, is that all they did was make more money. They keep increasing the prices. So instead of $150, it was up to $500 per person and stuff like that. So I said, well, we're just going to end this. So we did take that over by the time we got to like 1989 and did it. But there were about 4 years there that nobody wanted anything to do with it. It took me convincing them for a while. And then I think everybody's kind of followed that lead with corporate hospitality. I mean, there were 2 or 3 companies that we could bid it out to that wanted to do it, and got into business and made a lot of money. And now that company, which is kind of NFL on location now, is just sold for X hundreds of millions of dollars or something like that. So.
Okay, I think you succeeded there, Jim. I'm going to give you
bad
that
news. Bad news is I didn't get any piece of that. What can I say?
You forgot. Damn it! It's always that 1% you got to sign in the contract somewhere. But
I took a different philosophy. I said I'm not going to charge Coca-Cola. They make more money out of Coke when I'm already getting paid a sponsorship fee from them. So it's
Don't get
cover
greedy.
to cover our costs and do it the right way. I think that philosophy's changed a little bit since then, but that was what we thought.
What you also did, and what we're talking about here, we haven't talked about the game, and that's what I said at the opening here. There's nothing here about what happens on the field, except, of course, when you put the singer out there, you put the halftime entertainment out there. And until you got there and then started to take a hand, it was still looked at as a football game. But then it started to become entertainment. When you got into it, did you say, look, I know my football, I love my football, but this is a massive stage where we can put the singers, the actors, the presentations, the staging on it. It has to become an entertainment venue and a big event for it to really succeed, right?
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is when you're getting 110, 120 million people in this country watching it, you're getting a lot of people that are casual fans, and you don't know, what the little old lady in Iowa sitting there with her granddaughter watching the game, what appeals to them. It probably isn't Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. It was something else that was there. And
Well, it might be Brady. He is the matinee idol, so yeah.
I understand, yeah, but bad choice. Maybe I should pick on David.
Find somebody ugly.
How about David Woodley? Can I pick on him or something?
Oh
like that?
my God, boy did you just nail some old memories here. Oh,
So I really wanted to do something for them and the people in the stands. I mean, first goal was, I think the game was important, and obviously understanding that for those 125 people involved in coaching and playing the game, this was the most important moment in their lives. So you had to do everything right by them to make sure it was there. You never wanted to be the reason, the field fell apart or something like that. So, best situations you could do on the field and accommodating, didn't want to be delayed and everything like that. And they had the best of everything to get ready. But then you think of the person in the stands, you wanted them to go home. It's for probably 80% of the people, it's a once in a lifetime experience. And you want them to remember it as a once in a lifetime experience. I want them sitting back 5 years from now, sipping their beer, watching TV with their 10 friends and said, when I was there, this is what happened, type thing. And it doesn't happen someplace else. So that was important. And then, like I said, the third one is you got 110 million people watching this game, and you've got to do something to really make it there and get the attention to it. And maybe the thing that makes it most unusual now was something that happened by chance, and that's the commercials, in the game. The first commercial that was ever run was, 1984 by Apple. The Lemmings commercial. I don't know if you remember that. It was the strangest commercial ever. But that was the first one somebody did specifically for it. And then all of a
was the
sudden,
black and white commercial, right?
there's a black and white commercial where people are basically walking off a cliff, trying to get them to buy a Macintosh, I think, or something like that. Although I will say that after watching that commercial, that next year we played the Super Bowl in Stanford. And old Stanford Stadium was literally old Stanford Stadium.
Yes, it was. I was there. I caught a cold. I was sick the whole flight coming home from that Super Bowl.
Yeah, I always joke that when the first time I went there, I mean, it literally was sitting in an arroyo with 2x4s running down the hill with wooden planks on the 2x4s.
Yep.
At the seats. And the first time I got there, I walked out and there were tomato plants growing at the 50-yard line. I mean, Stanford is known as the farm, and not for any other reason than it is the farm. But, people had their sandwiches and dropped their tomato seeds out of their sandwiches or whatever it was, during Stanford football. And 3 months later, you got a tomato plant. So I will say that in the end zone where the students sat, there were other plants that were growing.
Shocking.
Probably should have harvested those. I could have made more money off of that or something than tomatoes.
Well, if you think about it, because the game became so clouded with the fog that rolled in, in the second half. I mean, if you would have just fed everybody the plants in the end zone, they would have said, "I can see the game, man. Yeah,
that's right.
Cool. I like it." Yeah.
Well, I thought of that. We spent $3.5 million on that game trying to get everything ready for it. Build a new press box, new locker rooms, all this sort of stuff. Had to bring in temporary lights because Stanford Stadium didn't have lights. So I got to the final one. I'm going, I just can't see putting these people in wooden bleachers. I can't do it. But, literally we kind of run out of money at that point. It was going to cost like another $150,000 to do something. So we came up with this idea of putting seat cushions down in every seat. And, but it was another 150 grand, like I said. So I literally went and knocked on the door of this guy that was a CEO of this company who'd run the commercial the year before and said, listen, I have this idea. Would you sponsor, putting these seat cushions down? And that was Steve Jobs, And so he ended up, those seat cushions, if you can find them on eBay, have got the Apple logo on one side, the Super Bowl logo on the other one.
I may, something? I may, God, I'm thinking I might still have them. I gave them to my folks years ago because you have no idea how there were members of the media who were not the big time media at that point, the network, but the little guys, the radio stations, the TV stations, they were running through the stadium trying to grab as many of these seat cushions as they could. And there was a friend of mine, I swear, he must have had a dozen of them. I said, how the hell are you going to get them home? You lived on the other coast. He said, I'll deflate them. I said, no, they don't deflate. They're cushions, you idiot. You can't do that.
Well, I'll give you the better story. What we found out, because we started doing seat cushions then every year.
Yep, I remember.
And so I found out that there were people that were bootlegging them or whatever, and had a little stand set up at JFK where they were selling them at JFK. And the people they were really selling them to were these guys that were taking off with their girlfriends and would come back and buy the seat cushion when they got there, because then when they went back to their wife, they could prove they were actually at the Super Bowl.
You're the reason why so many marriages broke up. See?
Yeah. Oh, I kept the marriages together because of that. They would have
But it's okay. Seeing as we're there, I wasn't going to go here, but now that you brought up Stanford, because that was one of my first Super Bowls. I mean, I was a kid reporter in Miami and followed the Dolphins there, Marino's early years. I've always wanted to ask this. What the hell was someone thinking putting a Super Bowl at Stanford Stadium? I mean, San Francisco was great. I loved being there. I'd never been there before. But all I remember is climbing up the hills and the mud and the slime, and everything was dirty. It was, and then they sat us, then again, we're just, we weren't the big time media.
Yep.
We're sitting out on the stands.
Yep.
At that point, sitting on the seat cushion, having a box lunch that looked like it had been made about 3 weeks ago somewhere in Haight-Ashbury, somebody who could barely understand what the concept of a sandwich was. It was, and again, we couldn't see the second half because of the fog that rolled in.
Like
Who
those
thought of Stanford as a good place for a Super Bowl, Jim?
Well, those lunch boxes are still worth some money, if you can find them. So, it's Roselle went to the University of San Francisco, was PR guy for University of San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And so he had a strong attachment there. And we had gone, when you really think before that game, you'd been to Miami, New Orleans, and LA with a jump off to go to Detroit and one time to go to Houston. And Tampa then had 84. So new things were coming on board, and he wanted to go to San Francisco. And there were those of us there that absolutely convinced him that there is no way in the world that we could play at Candlestick Park. It had 60,000 seats, and as you remember, it was underwater half the time. And so the other alternative was Stanford. And so that was where we went. And Andy Geiger, who was the athletic director at Stanford, we worked with him to try to get it done. And, at 85,000 seats, what can I say? Those days, tickets were probably only $40. So
that was it.
It made a difference. It was, I'll tell you, there were a number of things I learned. That to me was a turning point for the Super Bowl, because there were so many things we had to do there to decorate the stadium, to make it look like something, whether that's street pole banners or it was like the decor we took out off to another extreme from what I talked about us doing in Detroit. We had to bring in temporary lights. I went to the first game that was ever lit with temporary lights at Notre Dame Stadium between Michigan and Notre Dame to see how they worked. And then we did them, and we had, what I learned was one of the funnier stories was we got Stanford to do a night game in October, November. So we could bring in the lights to see how they worked. And the weirdest thing that you never think about is, there were no restrooms at this place either. There were very few. So we had to bring in a gazillion porta potties.
We know.
But you never think about the fact the porta potty doesn't have lights.
We know.
It's ambient light. So it was that game that I saw, and I said, we got to light up all these restrooms, or do something, put lights up there, or else nobody can go in there. So yeah, it was that was a great experience. Like you said, San Francisco was a great host. Everybody being downtown, and I can remember
awesome.
Dolphin fans and of course 49ers in the game, but riding up and down the cable cars, yelling at each other and things like that was just a great experience. I mean, Shula, one of the best ones is the press conference on Friday morning that they always had with the media that we brought the two coaches in for.
Mm-hmm.
Shula, they were staying in Oakland, and Shula came over on BART, which is their subway system. Yeah, or whatever you want to call it in San Francisco. So I can imagine just somebody, getting on BART and looking over there going, "Isn't that Don Shula? What's he doing on that?" But it was safer to get in there than try to go over the Bay Bridge in a limousine to bring him in. So it was better to go with BART. But that had to be an experience, to say the least.
You mentioned we're talking about the fans here, and we kind of hit the cost a little bit here and the way that prices have risen. And for the Super Bowl this year, they're talking about, and I've seen so many different figures, but we're talking about a seat for $15,000, $20,000, $110,000. Realizing that the Super Bowl is absolutely one of those unique sporting events worldwide every single year. But how much of a concern do you think there is, if there is at all, that in essence the game has become priced out for the general fan? You can't, Joe Beer can really can't go to the game unless he goes out and gets a third mortgage anymore. And to me, that's a shame. I'd like to see more fans be able to at least afford a limited amount of seats to get to the game.
Yeah, I mean, what did we always say about Disney in the old days? Did you save for 5 years to go for 5 days?
Pretty much.
It's almost becoming that way with the Super Bowl. And listen, I fought that left and right. I think when I left, the price of the ticket was like $500 or $600, which was a lot. Because somebody would call you up and say, "Okay, can I get 2 tickets?" I said, "Yeah, okay, well, send me a check for $1,000." They go, "What?" Now, of course, those days they were scalping them for $2,000 or $3,000. But I think the price on this has just gotten, it's that cost. They're not controlling the hotel rooms anymore. I mean, we used to really regulate that they could only charge rack rates. Now the hotel rooms are priced into the stratosphere.
Yep.
So, the cost to go to this game, if you throw in tickets, in a normal year, not when you've only got 25,000 people going, the cost to go to the game may be $15,000, $20,000 a person, which just is outrageous. And like you said, it's not there for the fan. And for them, if you're a fan last year of the Kansas City Chiefs and you've never been to a Super Bowl in your lifetime because you weren't around in 1970, you want them to go experience that once in a lifetime experience. And it should not be for all those people that got C-level suites, in their businesses. It should be, for people that can afford it. It's going to cost something, but it shouldn't be an outrageous cost to be there. And I think that's kind of what's happened with ticket pricing and things like that. I understand where the league's coming from because they kind of want to take the price away from the scalpers market. I always disagreed on the scalpers market because I thought one reason the price of the tickets is as high as it was is Econ 101, supply and demand, right? I don't believe that everybody that gets a ticket scalps it. I believe
not everybody, but a lot of them do. I mean, look, I still know people to this day who work in the industry, and all they do is a great friend of mine he has been looking for Super Bowl tickets since last summer. He's got his hand on about 20 of them right now, and he's reselling them at exorbitant prices. I mean, I saw some of the prices, and he's a licensed reseller. I mean, this guy isn't somebody who just shows up at in a dark alley somewhere, but he's making 1,000, 1,500% profit on these tickets.
Ed, I always said this. Have you ever filed a 1099 with anybody you bought a scalp ticket from?
No.
Okay. So what have you got here? You have this, it's kind of an unregulated market.
Yes.
You can say you're paying more for it and you're selling it for less. I always think if we want to really retire the national debt, let's just get all those guys that made money off of scalping and turn around and tax them. I'm not saying you in particular, but if you sold your $500 ticket for $1,500, you didn't declare that $1,000 that you made off it on your income tax return. So I think that's just one thing that's out there, and the government never looks at it. And there's people that have made a ton of money off of that. I mean, I look back, bad story, but the only time that really anybody got in a lot of trouble on this was Dominic Frontieri, Georgia Frontieri's husband.
George's husband, yeah.
And he dumped a whole bunch of tickets in Vegas and made a lot of money off it, and didn't report it. And the government came down on him because he didn't pay taxes on it. He went to jail. So, I can remember there was one head coach that the IRS was going to come in and look at what was taken on with him. And I said to him, listen, just go back and file an amended tax return and declare the income, and nobody's going to do anything to you. But I was never for me. I never could see why I wanted to make another $2,000 or $3,000. But that was the nature of the. I mean, the whole scalping thing of the Super Bowl kind of started with players that went to SC.
Wasn't going to say it, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a company across the street called Murray's Tickets, who basically bought the tickets off all the SC players, when they were in college. And then, so what happens is they get to the pros, they become the captains and go around and buy up all the tickets from all the other players on the team, and then make a commission selling them to Murray's, and that was the first big one that was out there. But
look, I know a team, and several teams that went there that I covered, where there were players who didn't make a tremendous amount of money. The money wasn't that big at that point. For a lot of these sub players, or a lot of these second string players, a lot of the unknowns, they would wait. They'd cash. That's every single one of them cashed the Super Bowl tickets and sold them. And I remember one defensive back who told me, Ed, I just made 10 times my normal salary by selling my Super Bowl tickets.
Well, there was one team I remember when they got to, there was 2-week time frame. And they the deal was, we're going to distribute the tickets to you on Tuesday, and you got the rest of the day off. And then when we come back on Wednesday, I don't want to hear one mention of tickets ever again. And literally they did. They gave them to them, and they ran to some place downtown where they were and walked in the hotel room and sold them. It's kind of the head in the sand.
It's still happening today.
Oh yeah, and it's probably a little different right now. I'm not saying the guys on the bottom end of the roster. I mean, it got to the point where it was a one-upmanship that we had with the players, and we finally capped the fact that you can't sell more. Teams can't give more than 25 tickets to each player, because what was happening is somebody give 15 and the other team give 20, and it was just getting worse. And the 49ers were the worst of that, of all of them. And so we capped it, and made sure that at least we capped what was going. Now, I understand that maybe Joe Montana needs all 25 of his, but the second string defensive tackle doesn't, that type of stuff. So there was money being made.
You hit on the commercials a little while ago, which is still the phenomenon that is the Super Bowl. More than any other sporting event, there is none other where the fans pay so much attention to the commercials, and it has become a show in and of itself, where now it is shows that look at the best commercials and the best 20 all-time commercials and the best commercials of this year. Just to prime this up and to get everybody ready, on the NBC Today show, here's where they discussed one of the commercials that you're going to see this year. And this is the kind of pre-advanced publicity it gets, and they're getting better every single year. And this one, I actually thought was not bad, but I'll let everybody here be the judges. From the NBC Today show.
The first ad this morning features Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher putting a new spin on a Shaggy classic for Cheetos. Take a look.
Did you steal my Cheetos again?
Just tell him it wasn't you.
But I caught you at the counter.
Wasn't me.
Saw you snacking on the sofa.
Wasn't me.
You even had him in the shower.
It wasn't me.
I even caught you on camera.
You don't want
who granted access to your snacks. Don't act surprised that she sneak behind your back. You gotta keep tabs before she empty that bag. Let's review the situation. Orange fingers, red flag. To keep you on stash, you gotta hide it better. If she asks where they are, you say forget her. Never admit to a word, and please don't upset her. And if she keep on snacking, I guess you let her.
Well, did you?
Wasn't me.
Oh. Okay.
Well, that's the first time that's ever worked.
Cheetos Crunch Pop.
Look, the first thing we have to admit from that commercial is Ashton Kutcher has proven that the man can't sing worth a lick. Holy Jesus, my God, it's terrible. It's like you can see small animals running for cover when he opens his mouth to sing. But it's the creativity factor. I mean, people now more than ever before, more than the game, Jim, it's the commercials that they sit for. And I've got to believe that the NFL, in all their wondrous wisdom, was all part of this and was part of saying, go ahead, come on, we'll help you push these because guess what? You're making more money. You're paying a greater ad dollar for it. We're happy as hell, and it's all entertainment. It still keeps people glued to that set, and they're not walking anywhere in those commercial breaks. The NFL's got to love this.
Yeah, and like I said, I let's don't put this down that this was ever planned. Like I said, it started.
Good point.
Was taking place, and the thing that I thought was the league, and everybody kind of got upset with the fact because all of a sudden you were getting all these athletes from other sports. I mean, the famous Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, whatever, off the shot off the side of the arena into
off of
this
the building, off of the earth, yeah.
McDonald's or whatever it was, and everybody's going, well, why isn't that, name a player, Fran Tarkenton or somebody like that,
They were really upset about it being other sports?
I think they were. I think there was some people that were there that really were upset. And I thought that was the great thing about this is if athletes are coming from other sports to be at your event and want to be part of your event, it's bigger than everybody else. I always say, I've had vice presidents and stuff come to the Super Bowl. The biggest pain in the ass coming to a Super Bowl was Michael Jordan. The year he took off from basketball, was playing baseball, he came to the Super Bowl. And Al Gore was at the Super Bowl, that same Super Bowl. And nobody knew Al Gore, who the hell cared? Michael Jordan, it was like the parting of the Red Sea where he, when he walked by. It was, and I remember there was a moment during that game that, Muhammad Ali was there. Nobody really paid attention to him. So, I mean, it was, I think that's great when they're there. And I used to think when we did the NFL experience, I didn't want just football players signing autographs. I wanted them from every sport there was because that showed how much it meant to them to be there. There was even a point where I think I reached out to the NBA and said, why don't you play the NBA All-Star game, Saturday night before the Super Bowl, this was 25 years ago, whatever it was. But I thought that would have been a good idea.
With regard to that, and again, we're talking about entertainment, and you just brought up the NFL experience, which the first time that I saw it was, it was a couple of tents, it was a little something here and there. It wasn't really that big. Now the NFL experience has become this mass. Don't worry, my dog barks too during the show, so you're okay.
No, I know what can
Everybody
walks down the street.
I just tell him to shut up. It's okay. He worries. Somebody comes to the door of the studio, he barks like crazy. I just tell him to shut up.
Mine doesn't pay attention to me.
It's when the
Well,
beagle
it's
when the beagle barks, then everything changes.
The NFL experience was interesting because the way it started, if there's a vice I've got, and you'd probably see it if you came in my house, is a baseball card collector, football card collector, and I've got all these cards from wherever it was, and in the late '80s. That was a big thing again, and all these card companies were coming out. So we decided we would do a card show at the Super Bowl. And we did it in New Orleans in 1990. And we built a tent on the deck, the parking deck at the Superdome. Because my thought was, if you're going to sell a Mickey Mantle rookie card or whatever it was, which probably in those days was all of $5,000 or $6,000, who else had that disposable money than people that came to the Super Bowl? Well, we were shocked. We had 40,000 people come through that card show. And so I said, I think we've got something here that's really kind of unique. So the next year we came back and we came up with this idea of NFL Town Square, which was I guess based on the concept that it's kind of like a mall, and the card show would be an anchor store, and we'd make a merchandise store as an anchor store, and we'd have an NFL film studio as the movie theater, and fill it in with other things there. I think our total budget to do it was $275,000. And we drew, and I kind of lied about it. I told Tagliabue that Roselle had approved it when he hadn't, but that was when the transition from Tagliabue from Roselle to Tagliabue. But we had 73,000 people come to it, and now the thing draws 250,000 people, and it's a place to be. And like I said, it started with the card show concept that was there. And I think the idea was the 73,000 people that went the first year in Tampa, ironically, that was the one with the Iraq War and all that. But I'm going to tell you, 75% of them were locals that wanted to come down and be part of the game.
Well, I think that's it. The experience lets everybody get close to the game and still gives you the feel that you're there, even though you'll never get inside the stadium. I mean, to me, that's brilliant. And as I'm looking at all the other championship events here, Jim, there's no doubt that the NFL changed championship events and changed the way everybody puts together the event. And is it not fair to say that were it not for the Super Bowl and you and the NFL experience and all the things that you brought into here, it'd be a little less for a lot of these events because, as you said earlier, they just copy off you. And that's all they have to. They watched you succeed. You have the Super Bowl evolved all these championship events into becoming the NBA weekend, the NHL All-Star weekend. They all saw the need and the dollars you could make by doing these things.
Well, you said that one of the great ironies is that the woman, Sue Robachek, was the woman I put in charge of handling, the first town square. And she was dating the guy who was the special events guy with baseball. And ironically, within a year, baseball had their own version of it. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with stealing and adapting those things. And, I've seen them at the Final Fours, and it's tougher to do, I think, with, the World Series and Stanley Cup, NBA Finals. But I do think certainly you're seeing at Final Fours, and you're seeing at the NBA All-Star Game or MLB All-Star Game or those type of things that you can plan ahead to make it happen. And I think that it's kudos to us for thinking a little bit ahead of it and trying to get there. And they said that somebody asked me once, who's your audience? And I said, well, for us,
America,
we want to do
the world.
Well, we wanted to do something where the team saw things that they could turn around and use themselves. We wanted to show the other leagues that we were doing stuff that they weren't doing, and we were doing it, and they could copy us. So, that was it was a little in there. And all the people that were in I guess I call it the event group between all the other sports, hockey, basketball, NCAA, whatever it is. We all talked, got no problem about what's going on. And we've got similar circumstances. So, how you adapt to it. And, after Super Bowl 36, when one of the great funny story from Super Bowl 25 was, if you remember right, everybody was afraid of that the Iraqis had some sort of chemical that they were going to unleash. So we went out and bought all the available antidote to that chemical that we could find. And we had it stored underneath the stadium, and we had a plan of how we would distribute it. I think unfortunately, we probably only had like 10,000 doses, and we would have needed 70,000. But we sold that off to the NBA for the NBA All-Star Game. And I think they sold it off to the NCAA for the Final Four. I don't know who ended up with it last, but it was ours that we originally bought. So, there was no harm in doing that.
With regard to that and where we are now in world society at this point, and all the protections that are being taken for people when they go to even the smallest events, what you just mentioned is something that very few people would know, and they would be shocked to hear. But is it not fair to say that there are you could fill volumes with the amount of security responsibilities that this brings up? Because as you put more events into it and brought more people, then I have to believe as things ratcheted up and we became a different society, especially after 2001, that the fans are unaware of the immense amount of money and time that has to be spent
And that's what
just
you want to
adding
do.
that extra security.
Yeah, I'll give you a funny story from Super Bowl 36, the one after 9/11. And if you remember right, after going through everything, with 9/11, we had an anthrax scare.
Yep.
That November. So there was a concern we had, and I remember we had one of those things called a tabletop exercise, where you bring in all the people from wherever it is, police, fire, CDC, or whatever, and you go through, here's the scenario, how are you going to respond to the scenario? So the scenario is we've had an anthrax outbreak, in section 136. What do we do? And all these things. So they start turning around. They said, okay, well, we'd isolate that area. We'd take those people and spread everybody else away from it. Then we'd have to take everybody out of the building and we'd have to wash them down. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, they'd have to take all their clothes off and we'd have to wash them all down with water. I said, everybody's going to take their clothes off and we're going to wash them down with water? He said, yeah. And then I thought for a second, well, we are in New Orleans, so it's not that big a deal.
No. That's a terrible scene. I don't think I'll ever get rid of that visual in my head now.
But if you ever look at a broad look over that stadium, outside of the stadium on game day, there are giant trucks out there full of water, just in case we had to do that. So yeah, it's kind of preparing for every eventuality you could have.
What's the story? As I said, you've got a million stories that you've never told. So here's your chance. You've told so many, but is there one sitting in the back of your mind that, from everything that you did and from all the machinations and all the trials and tribulations you went through, that still speaks to you as a special moment, a fun moment, but something that you've never told before?
Oh boy, it's a tough question because I'm not really sure where I go with that.
That's why I get paid the small money, Jim. That's the big.
Each one of these games, I'll give you one, and I've told this one before, and people have written it, but I think it's worth noting because it has to do with Tampa, and that game, Super Bowl 25. In those days, we did not resod the field. We reseeded it. And so after the bowl game, we came in and reseeded the entire field. And we didn't have a lot of sun. Sorry to say, Florida, we didn't have a lot of sun in January. And so it didn't grow. And we came in and we painted it afterwards. And we brought, the Bills and the Giants came in to practice on it on Saturday. And the middle of the field where the logo was tearing up. And George Toma comes to me, about 2:00 in the afternoon, and he says, listen, we got a real problem. The field's not holding. We got to replace it. I said, what? He said, yeah, we got to replace the middle of the field between the 35-yard lines. And I'm kind of like, really? How are you going to do this? So he said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. So what he did was he came in and took out basically where the logo was at midfield, went over to the University of Tampa and stole the sod out of their soccer stadium or soccer field and came in and had it all planted, had it all painted, everything down on Sunday morning, and nobody knew the difference that he did.
Are you using stole as a euphemism here or realistically steal?
Well, I don't think he has permission.
George is the guy who's taking care of fields at the Super Bowl for God knows how long. I can't imagine that anybody asks him, George, do whatever you want.
I know. Well, I somehow I envision the athletic director of University of Tampa walking in on Monday morning, looking down his field and go, where the hell is it? But obviously we replaced it, but it would be kind of a shock to see what had taken place. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things that have taken place, and entertainers that we've gone back and forth with and doing different things. And for the entertainers, it's always something that most of them don't understand the stage they're on. Oh yeah, I've played 50,000 people in a stadium before, no big deal. And then you get out there and all of a sudden you realize there's 80,000 people and there's 110 million people watching it. It's not as easy as you thought it was.
Was there ever a performer you had to push out there? You had to say, "Go ahead, you're on, damn it, no matter what happens, you're on."
No, I did. There was one that sang it live. That his father was standing about 10 feet away from him, mouthing the words to him, so he wouldn't forget him. But no, we've been pretty fortunate. We were pretty fortunate with that.
Look, in my mind, if you can score a Prince every year, you're a Prince or a Springsteen. You're good for me. I mean,
well, when Michael Jackson did it, one of the things that happened that we argued with him and he wouldn't pay attention to us. We said, well, he's used to coming out on stage and standing there for 2 minutes and the crowd going nuts. And he said he wanted to, and in this one, he jumped out of the middle of the stage and he stood there for like 1 minute and 15 seconds, didn't move. And we kept telling him, nobody's going to respond to you. And the shots, if you look at the shots that they have on the network feed, there are people sitting there like this going, what's going on, And then he finally started. I think the key was he had to touch the cap at the top of his cap for the music to start. I think the first song was Billie Jean. And so he had to do that to get it started. But yeah, he didn't understand it, but he got it after he got there and he looked around and saw nobody was responding to him at all.
For Michael Jackson to do that, what's the matter? I thought I was famous. Now, out of all the things that happen in a Super Bowl week, there is one event, one day, 1 hour that happens that grinds my gears to no end. But it's still one of the most popular events every single year. And Jim Steeg, I have to know if you had a hand in making this day what it has become.
Journalists from all over the world were allowed just 1 hour with players from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Oakland Raiders. The questions were not only posed by the American media, but there were some radio and TV personalities from Mexico, Japan, and even Denmark. There were also a variety of celebrities on hand to test their interviewing skills, including MTV representatives Mandy Moore, a pop music singer, and Raven Simone, who is now all grown up from The Cosby Show. And oh yeah, there was one comedian trying to pass himself off as legendary promoter Don King.
Super Bowl 37, a game so big and exciting I can't find the words to describe it. It's stupendous, it's magnificacious, it's stupendous. I want to represent you, I want to be your manager, your agent, I want to be everything I got to be because I need some money, I need more money, you need money. This shouldn't even be free, this should be on pay-per-view, don't you agree?
For the most part, the players also had a pretty good sense of humor during the crazy day. Many of them even pointed their video cameras at us.
You know what, I don't remember. I've taken too many hits to the head in the last 15 years, and I can't really remember what happened yesterday, to be honest with you.
Is this fun for you? Do you like
I'm having a great time. Yeah, I'm having a good time, man.
Aren't you glad you're in San Diego instead of New England or something?
Or at home? Yeah. Been there before. Yeah, we just having a good time, man. Chilling with the boys all week long. Just no kids, no wife, just hang out with the boys playing ball all week long.
Just one example, Super Bowl 37, 2003, Raiders and the Buccaneers, thanks to KFMB TV in San Diego for that. Media Day. Jim, I hate it. It's the one I want to, you got to go. But when we've let all the entertainers in there and we're in there trying to do our work as media, it's one of the most annoying days possible, but it gets monster. Every news department in the world covers it. Who pushed this along and said, yeah, let's go ahead. We don't mind the entertainment. Come on. You had something to do with it, didn't you?
Well, it's interesting how it developed. It used to be called Photo Day.
Right.
And because it was the time the guys came dressed in their jerseys, or whatever, and full uniforms. I think one time the Bills just showed up in their jerseys and blue jeans. So they had to go back and tell them, no, this is full uniform. The Giants at Super Bowl 21 saw there was Photo Day. Well, okay, it's Photo Day. I'm not talking. So we had to argue with them. Yes, it's still an interview day. You still have to talk. But I think things change because it used to be at the practice fields for a long time.
Yes.
We then took it to, in New Orleans, we decided we put it inside the Superdome, 1 year, and both teams came to the Superdome. And then I want to think we came and we did it at Anaheim Stadium. We had both teams come to Anaheim Stadium and do it there. And then we figured, well, we got to do this, bring the teams to the media rather than take the media to the teams. It made the day shorter. But I think, if there's one celebrity that probably changed it was Downtown Julie Brown from MTV when
Yeah,
she
that's
showed
fair.
up. That kind of got this thing that everybody else was going to come and all of a sudden be around it. It became more about who was there rather than the interview type stuff. Um, Remember, it was in the old days. It used to be kind of the second day because the teams would arrive Monday, and there'd be a smaller press conference Monday at the hotel for really the hardcore media that wanted to get, it's the first shot at getting everybody, and it was a lot smaller. It wasn't the whole team that was there; it was the top 10 players or something like that. And then media day. Media day was an off day for the players.
Yes.
They'd come, then they had the day off. But you still had Wednesday and Thursday to do it too. But yeah, it became it's become a circus, and now
circus, that's the word.
now it's more because it's a production number. It's Monday night, and it's on TV. It's NFL Network, and it's the interview thing. It's more Deion Sanders from NFL Network getting asked the questions to the top guys and the other people that are there. So it's changed a lot. But it's a television event now, not as much just for the media to get access.
Where does the Super Bowl go from here, Mr. Special Events? I mean, it seems as if they've done everything.
Well, I don't know where technology is going to take this over the years, and how it's going to change from that, and how we're going to cover it because of that. Um, it's a worldwide event now. I remember the first time the game was broadcast in England. I think 12 million people watched it there, and you went, "Oh my God, 12 million people! That's not that many." Then you realize it came on at 1 o'clock in the morning. Um, but yeah, it's become a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, that was really what sold Michael Jackson when we told him the game was going to be broadcast in 180 countries. That was the thing that really got his attention. Um, but I don't know. It grows. I used to say it grows exponentially, but there's a point that maybe part of it is the cost of what it is to go there. I mean, host committees are having to raise. I mean, what New York raised $60 million to support the event for their host committee. So I don't know where it goes. I mean, there's a point you want to try to. I was taught, and I didn't subscribe to it that much. I was taught when I was in B school that you got to have managed growth. Tend not necessarily to manage growth. We just try to grow what's going to take place. And the game in the 80s, the game was the right time and the right place in the 70s. It was the second, third week of January. It was time to have another party. It's a championship game. It's not a championship series. It's, those type of things. And I always said, from a media standpoint, think how it evolved. And then, print media was stopping, not covering as much. And then USA Today came out, and all of a sudden they now have to compete with this little colored newspaper that is at your front door too. So, Miami Herald's got to send 4 writers to the game instead of just sending one guy, in order to compete with USA Today. Then all of a sudden satellites show up, and you can start, it used to be that people would go tape an interview. And you probably remember this days when the Dolphins were in the game in '83. You'd go tape the interview, put it on an airplane, and send it back to Miami.
Yep.
They air the next day. Now it pops up on a satellite, and you've got ESPN covering things live, and that changed everything. And radios, sports radio didn't exist, and I know a few guys had done radio shows before, but it was kind of Mike and the Mad Dog on WFAN coming to Minnesota in '92.
We haven't even talked about the nightmare that Radio Row has become these days.
Radio Row is, now you got 80 to 100 stations going. It used to be they'd be there in the morning. Now that they're all day long, and they're not interviewing any players. All they're interviewing
they interview each other.
Yeah, well, they're interviewing somebody that's trying to promote some item,
Yes.
Oh, I got Joe Montana over here. Great, he's coming over. He's talking to me about erectile dysfunction or something like that.
Come on, that's that's real. That's what happens. You get the people who come through, and go, and I love it when people think in sports radio, "Oh wow, they got a chance to talk to Dan Marino. How great!" Yeah, Dan goes from this table to this table to this table to this table. There's no such things as exclusives, but now you have the entertainers that'll walk through and they'll say, well, local station in Miami, no. ESPN wants me, and then Fox wants me, and then CNN wants me, and then NFL Network has got to have me. So it's really become the haves and the have-nots there, where so often it is just the radio guys who are sitting there, and I love them all. I was there, but they're just kind of interviewing each other.
Yeah.
We got to fill the time.
Well, and then you got somebody that you can always hear it. I mean, I always listen to the San Diego stations, and they're there, and all of a sudden they say, "Oh, there's so and so. Go grab him. He's over at so and so. Get him to come over here for 5 minutes," or something like that. It's funny. I've kind of crafted up a book, and one of the arguments I always have with publishers, they say, "How do you promote it?" And I said, I can go spend a week on Radio Row and talk about a book, and I can sell it all across the country, and
Sure.
they don't know what in the world I'm talking about when I say that.
They can do it right here. Just finally, before I let you go, do you miss it? I mean, any of it? I mean, you're home this week. You've been home for a while. You're only in charge of special events. I mean, till 2004. So I mean, I know you a little bit. Your mind's always working. You got to miss it a little.
Yeah, I do, because I think you watch it. I miss the people the most. The time I was in San Diego, we came so close a couple times. That year we were 14-2 and thought we were going. And the year we went to the AFC Championship game, I always thought it was kind of like, the prodigal son returning. Maybe I could go back to the Super Bowl with a team on my back or something like that, which would have been great. But I think maybe I learned a lesson is that there's a little bit more to do than me to get there. But
no, Jim, stay with it. It's you.
It was more me than it was Rivers. I think that was. But I think that really was a. You watch it. It used to be when we first got to San Diego. Literally, my wife and I would go to Maui, Super Bowl Sunday, and we found out that was a dose of reality, because you're still having the fights on Super Bowl Sunday over chaise lounges at the pool, and I remember we watched one Super Bowl from the Grotto Bar at the Hyatt in Maui,
which might have been the best game you ever watched. Think
about
it.
It was, and you realize how there is a rest of the world out there that's taking place. So that perspective was important to me, rather than think the whole world rotated around the Super Bowl. But yeah, I miss the people more than anything, because there's a camaraderie, because you got a common purpose, common thing you're trying to get done, and the sense of, outside of, and thank you for not asking me, outside of the Janet Jackson moment,
What?
we used to always, we'd always get together on the field, an hour and a half, 2 hours after the game, usually on the stage. We did the trophy presentation and pop open champagne and sit there and grab each other, take pictures, and celebrate the fact of what was accomplished. But after we got everybody out of the parking lot, that type of thing. Teams left.
As far as the Janet Jackson moment, I remember that, and somebody was watching, and they were aghast, and I went, "Ladies have boobies, okay?" That was my exact words, and she turned to me and said, "That's not very nice." I said, "Well, they do. Happens."
Well, I'll give you my story after after Super Bowl 25, we had our get together. We didn't because we didn't do the trophy presentation on the field till Phoenix in '96. That was the first time we did it, which ironically is the first time I think anybody had ever done that. Now everybody's got to do it. Or it's like, I think way before, when we made winners merchandise, that we gave out to everybody after the end of the game, and all of a sudden they're winning, Super Bowl champs merchandise. Remember when we did that for the first time? Now everybody's got to have winners. My collection that I've got the best of is I've got winners, losers merchandise. I've got the cap.
It was like all that losers merchandise you got to have ready. It winds up someplace in a bin in Belize somewhere.
Yeah, correct. I've got the cap from a whole bunch of losers.
See, that's got a value to it. But
so I was walking after Super Bowl 25, hour and a half, 2 hours after the game. I'm just kind of walking around, looking at everything. I remember I walked into the Giants locker room, and there's tape strewn all over the place. Everybody's gone. The whole place is cleaned out. There's a table in the middle of the room, and on a table in the middle of the room is the Lombardi Trophy. Nobody taken it. So I packed it up, put it in the trunk of my car, called George Young, and said, "George, you guys missing anything, that you forgot or something like that?" And he went, "Oh, yeah, okay." I said, "I'll give it to Parcells in the morning."
Yeah, it's just a trophy. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's the money that catches us all later. Jim, it's I tell you, the stories that you've got and the things that you have done. Congratulations, first of all, because you and so many other people made the
Yeah.
Super Bowl into something that is now a part of our lives, and it's fun, it's annoying, it's great, it's wonderful, it's grueling to those of us who have been there. I've been to 26 Super Bowls. I stopped at 26. I haven't been in quite some time. And people, when we talk about Super Bowls, I said, I'm very happy. I'm going to be home. My food, my adult beverages are here. I got the TV turned up as loud as I possibly can. I can enjoy the commercials. I don't have to worry. Yeah, but don't you want to go? I said, no, not anymore. It's just the travel, the getting there, and
Been there,
the
done
things,
that. You know.
been there, done that. And it's not as much fun now as it used to be, because then it was like you could maybe get a story that no one had gotten, or an interview that no one had got before. But now it's also regimented, so controlled, and you can only talk to the players so much. It's just everything is spoon-fed to you right now. It's not nearly as much fun as it used to be when it was almost guerrilla warfare.
Well, I remember some of the best times I ever had when the Dolphins were in the game, and they were game in Stanford. The game there, I'll never forget. I think the plane landed, and within the first 2 hours, when the plane landed with the team, there were like 9 of them in my office. And I was in San Francisco, and they were in Oakland. I mean, Nat Moore led a group of guys that all came over to see me or something like that. It was great. Or I can remember Super Bowl 39, my last Super Bowl. I'm sitting in the office and Tom Brady walks in. It's those moments that kind of you think about and you remember the relationships you've had with them. I'll give you my last weird story, which shows you how stupid I am.
Come on.
Okay. We're Super Bowl 19 at Stanford. The Dolphins are going to practice at the stadium. And like I said, there was a whole bunch of guys still left on that team that, the Bo Campers and the Baumhauers and the Deweys and all those guys were, Larry Gordon, run down the list. We're still on the team. And so I decided I'd go out for practice and go see them on Saturday, see how they were doing. I walked in the locker room, and one of them, I can't remember, said, God, we got this real problem. We want to buy all this merchandise to take home or something like that, but we can't go down to the lobby store that's there, because if we do, we get mobbed. So we haven't been able to buy anything. I said, well, okay, let me see what I can do. So I went up and crafted up an order form, of everything from caps to shirts to, keychains or whatever it is. What do you want? And gave it to the guys there. I collected probably $80,000 from those guys on that day to buy this merchandise. And I basically went out and got a couple people, filled all the orders, put them in bags, put them in their lockers for they were there the next day. Well, it was a lesson I learned, and what I decided is we had to create a separate store just for the players to go to, because they couldn't go anyplace else. So I don't know whether they still do it, but we used to just create the store where the players could come buy whatever they wanted to buy, for themselves to take home. But, like I said, I wasn't planned. It was something we learned. It was because I was such an idiot to sit there and volunteer to go up and say I'd take care of this and get them all for them. But
Okay, what's the lesson you learned? Never volunteer for an athlete.
never volunteer, never be a nice guy.
First thing you do, they take advantage. Oh, you're going down to get hats? How about for the other 27 of us, Jim? I'm sure you.
It was unbelievable. Like I said, they all had the cash. It was $80,000 I had. It was nuts. Obviously, our per caps that day went up.
And now they just go, I'll wait till I get home. I order it off eBay or something like that. I'll get it from the store. Listen, sit back, enjoy it. I really hope. It's always a pleasure. It's been such a pleasure to know you, and we've gotten to know each other over the years and talk these stories. Sit back, enjoy the game, my friend, because there is no doubt about it that it has the Jim Steeg name all over it.
Thank you.
And all those thousands, tens of thousands of people that worked with you over the years that helped bring everything together. They all share a whole lot of pride in what they've done. And we'll all remember it when we're on our 5th chicken wing and our second 6-pack of beer sitting at home, which will be perfect. Jim,
I may make it to the 5th chicken wing, maybe not the second 6-pack.
Well, yeah, okay. I admit, okay. Now, because Brady is in it, I do have Sam Adams, which I will have to have. I'll have to have my ceremonial Sam Adams to open the game, even though it's usually for Bruins games, but that's okay. But yeah, I have a feeling that my waistline is going to be absolutely destroyed on Sunday, thanks to those damn chicken wings. It's the Lady Shannon will make sure of that. Thank God. Hey, listen, man, best to you and your family. Be healthy, really, and it's always
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again. So let me remind everybody before we let Jim go that if you want to follow Jim Steeg, you can do that. You can catch him on Facebook. It's at jim.steeg. Great memories here too. I mean, a lot of pictures of great players and friends that Jim has had. And on Twitter, it's at Jim Steeg as well. You can catch him there and you can follow him and send Jim a note on Sunday and go, thanks, Jim. Thanks, because we really all should. Jim, take care of yourself. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, buddy. Jim Steeg joins us, and we thank you as well for joining us here. Don't forget, catch us on YouTube, catch us on Facebook, catch us on Twitter. Make sure you listen to every episode of The Man in the Arena. That is your Super Bowl day to do. Don't listen to the commercials. Catch us, and then you can do that as well. Thanks to Jim once again. Thanks, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner, and until we meet again, everybody, rock on, true believers. See ya!
You're still here?
Are you not entertained?
It's over.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
Go home.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Go.
That's all, folks.